Welcome. My name is Athena Heater. I am the head of graduate enrollment and associate director of admissions for the Integrated Innovation Institute at Carnegie Mellon University. And I'm so excited to have you here today for our fireside chat. This is a really unique opportunity to learn from individuals who are past and kind of present members of the III community. And this fireside chat is going to be a great way to learn more about the engineering industry, innovation, and innovation education. So I'm really excited that you're here today. I'll go ahead and introduce our panelists for you, because that's who you're really here to hear from. First is Jon Cagan. He is the David and Susan Coulter Head and George Talman and Florence Barrett Ladd Professor of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Carnegie Mellon University. My colleague said that should have its own zip code. It's such an impressive title. He is also the co-founder and has been the co-director of the Integrated Innovation Institute at Carnegie Mellon University. He served as the interim dean and prior associate dean for graduate and faculty affairs for the College of Engineering. He was recently honored with the Robert A. Dougherty Award for Sustained Contributions to Excellence in Education. He's active in professional societies and editorial boards. And he's the fellow of the American Education for Advancement and Science. And he's authored several books, more than 350 publications, and is an inventor on multiple patents. We're thrilled to have Jon with us, as well as Rebecca Pinn, who is a double alum of Carnegie Mellon University. She has her Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering and is a 2012 graduate from the Integrated Innovation Institute. What was the Master's in Product Development, which is now the Master of Integrated Innovation for Products and Services. She currently serves as the Director of Innovation Consulting Strategy at EPAM Continuum. And throughout her career, she's partnered with clients from various industries, acting as a trusted advisor throughout their innovation journeys. She collaborates closely with her clients to understand their unique challenges and opportunities, and together they navigate the intricacies of innovation processes, identifying creative solutions, and implementing strategies that deliver the tangible results. And so I'm going to invite them to present here today.
I'll ask Jon the first opening question. Jon, take us back to the beginning. What led you to found the MIIPS program? What were you seeing in terms of gaps in the market and academia? I'd love you to give us that story.
Yeah, that's great. And welcome, everybody. It's great that you're joining us today. You know, it's interesting that this MIIPS program really goes back many years to even a course that we had at Carnegie Mellon, probably the first in the world, where we brought engineering, design, and business together to think about creating products. And why is that? Well, those are the different constituents that you need, whether it's a physical product or a service or any kind of sort of innovation along those lines, to have those different components if it's going to be successful in the marketplace. And how do you create something so new? And it evolves over time. And then we started to really bring in industry. And again, no one was really doing that at the time to help sponsor projects that were very real. What was so interesting is how engaged industry was, and they were learning so much. And we realized, you know, there weren't master's programs or educational programs beyond sort of this course that brought all these people together to be able to teach the skill set needed to be able to really be successful in the innovation space. And that led to the master's degree, which was eventually renamed to the Master of Integrated Innovation for Products and Services. And it really was filling a gap, even today, really bringing in these different disciplines in a core sense isn't what you see at most places. But we've sort of been a leader over many, many years on doing that and staying at the forefront to be able to create graduates like you, Rebecca, that are so successful in industry. So let me ask you a question. That is, you've lived these results. You know, you graduated, boy, what, 15 years ago, roughly? Is that about it? Something like that.
We don't need to do the math. It's okay.
We don't have to do the math. That's fair, because I've been here longer. But, you know, what about your own journey? I guess what I think it's twofold. Let me first start with what have you done with the degree since you had the degree? And let's talk a little bit about that and maybe how it helped you. And then I'd like to go back to what led you to it. But let's start with that.
Yeah. So I might flip, well, so when I went into the program, I thought I'd stay a mechanical engineer. I thought, I've loved math, I love building, I love creating, I'm going to stay an engineer. And then when I was in the program, it was really eye-opening to me to realize, especially when clients came in, they don't know what to do next. I thought companies had these endless roadmaps of ideas that they had it for development for the next forever amount of time. And actually in our capstone project, it really dawned on me that, oh, they see a market, they see a place they want to go, but they don't know what to do. They don't know what to create and what to put out. So during school, I really fell in love with the ethnography process, the uncovering what is the actual problem we're trying to solve. And so when I graduated, I really wanted to focus on that and make the shift from being a design engineer to being a design researcher. So when I graduated, I got an opportunity to work at a small Brooklyn-based design firm called Pensa. I worked there for 2.5 years doing design research. So helping a lot of our clients say, we need to create a yogurt packet. We need to create a golf bag. We need to create a soda fountain. And we want to create the best golf bag, the greatest soda fountain there is. What do we need? So I would go out, do the ethnography, work with the design team and figure out what are the criteria and attributes we need. And then I had a conversation with my boss about 2 years in, and he's like, Rebecca, you're not really a researcher. I was like kind of shocked by that because I'm like, I just spent 2 years. He's like, you're a strategist. You do enough research to get you the information you need, and then you translate that into what do we need to build and create, and what's the story we need to put around it? What do our clients need to do? So he's like, you're not really a researcher, you're a design strategist. So that's sort of where my first career transition came. And then I was looking for a new job. Continuum Innovation was a place I always really admired. So I applied there. Got the job. So I moved from Pittsburgh to New York City to Boston. I seem to want to get colder and colder weather. And then I've been there ever since. So Continuum Innovation was acquired by EPAM. So I started in 2015. We were acquired by EPAM in about 2018. And I've been there ever since. So yeah. And then the second, oh, sorry.
And I know what I'm curious then is you got your undergraduate in mechanical engineering, and then you didn't get a master's in mechanical engineering. You took your master's, which is now the MIIPS program. What made you decide to go that route?
So when I was working as an engineer, I first met my first industrial and designer. So I was sitting at my desk, and behind me was someone, actually went to Carnegie Mellon too. And he was an industrial designer, and I was really curious about what he was doing. We were both doing aircraft interiors. So I was kind of doing stuff, design stuff, went to the floor, see it made. And he was like designing in a different way. But it also, maybe it was naive of me, but I was like, I want to see the things on made in market. And it was sort of different with aircraft interiors. It was low volume. I wanted to do high volume. I wanted to go into what was formerly Bed Bath & Beyond, be like, here's all the things I've designed on shelves. And I wanted to work in more interdisciplinary teams. So what I saw was like, I'm only working with engineers, and I'm getting exposed to all these other, a little bit exposed to these other disciplines. So I went back. I got really interested in design in a very shallow way. I'll say I don't claim when I applied, I didn't really know what design was. I knew design in terms of aesthetics. I took art classes in high school, but the concept of design as a field, I didn't really understand. So I applied to the program. I remember the capstone project actually when I was a senior, and a huge truck was brought to the campus. So I was like, there's a program that Carnegie Mellon has that's multidisciplinary that I'm really interested in. So that led me to apply. And like I said, I still thought I'd stay an engineer. I just thought it would be changing the kind of engineering I was doing.
Interesting.
So, we don't have to do the math, but it was a while ago. I went to the program, and I know, because I still do alumni hours, the innovation has changed a lot. How has the program changed? I mean, the name changed, but how has the program changed? How has innovation changed, and how has the program responded to that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, in some ways, innovation itself is the same, and that you're trying to create something that doesn't exist, that people want. I mean, there's being creative, but innovation is more than that, right? Because you can be creative and you create something no one cares about. With innovation, you're creating products that succeed in the marketplace or to fulfill some sort of a need that people really want. And so that's still the driver. But what has changed is a few things. Certainly the rate of innovation, and part of it is also the rate of technology and the rate of in the sort of the system level look at those technologies. So I think what's really been exciting about this program, and I understand from many people at other universities that, we really continue to be a leader here, is the notion of really looking at where the puck's going, as the analogy goes, in terms of what's emerging, and how do we make sure that our graduates are well prepared to be able to start on the ground with their feet running as as society, as technology, as the concept of design, as infrastructure changes. So, for example, AI and ML is so hot right now, but Integrated Innovations had a course for probably 10 years, maybe not quite that long, but for quite a many years on AI and how it really serves that role in the innovation process. And so I think that that's part of where things continue to evolve for the program. And I think the courses really try to stay on that cutting edge. And I still think we are very unique in terms of the true focus on bringing these different disciplines together and cross-training people so that you understand that you're part of this team that you can't do alone, even though you bring those skills, for example, of engineering to the table. So I think that's probably where I see the program evolving, is just really to stay on that edge. So, going back to you for a question for you, Rebecca, is, you know, um, where was I? Okay. From an industry's perspective, what do you see as how things have evolved and what the must-have skills are for product leader and innovator now, and what's emerging that you think is important for graduates, and where maybe this program can help them?
Yeah. So to echo you, I think speed is definitely there on all the projects I'm working on. Every time I'm, responding to an RFP with clients or proposing, they're always like, "Can we do this faster? Can we do this faster? We like need to keep up with what's going on." So I think that speed, everyone's feeling it. The biggest trends I'm seeing over, the last 15 years is the programs are getting bigger. I think it used to be, I think back to when I was in college, which was a long time ago, design thinking was emerging and it was very physical product. Industrial design was becoming this like, what is this big thing? It was these single products. When I started joining industry after grad school, it was really around service design. So it was bringing together products and how do we create the services around those products. And then digital became a big thing, especially with smartphones. And all of a sudden, service, it got bigger. The teams got bigger. Digital, it got even bigger. And all of a sudden, you have this constant release cycle. So those teams got bigger. Then COVID hit. And all of a sudden, companies were like, we are not prepared for this digital world. We need to invest way more. And hey, if we're going to invest all this money, we want to make sure our puck is going in the right direction. We need like a North Star vision. What is innovate? Like, how can we be innovative if we're going to invest all this money? And it's just the programs have gotten so much bigger because the types of innovation happening, the types of skills you need are just requiring so many different skill sets. So the biggest project I was on in my career was a 25-person team. It was a program I led about 2 years ago. And we had myself as the lead and the strategist. We had a game designer. We had an instructional designer. We had multiple UX designers. We had a solution architect. We had subject matter experts in that area. We had a whole dev team. I mean, and we were all doing something net new. We created a proof of, it was Apple Vision Pro just came out. So we were making like a game in Apple Vision Pro and also iPad. So it was like new technology, a new thing that didn't exist. Innovation has just gotten bigger. And I think it's really hard to, it's easy, I think, to kind of innovate in a really small team. When I was at Continuum, our teams were 2 to 3 people. Like I said, our teams have gotten a lot bigger. bigger means more communication in multidisciplinary teams means we all need to speak the same language, which we don't always do. But I will say, as an engineer, it's given me a lot of credibility. So everyone, I'm like, I'm a former engineer. I get it. I know technology is hard. In terms of emerging trends, it's one of the things I've been really trying to get myself up to speed on in the last year is data. So a lot of times when we're proposing innovative ideas to clients, what is required, and our clients are pushing us. We need AI, ML, we need AI. And we're pushing ideas that do require that. And I'm realizing I need to know more about data. Like, what is data? What is the baseline our clients need? And so getting a little bit smarter on that, because at the end of the day, and again, I don't claim to be an expert, but these AI MLs, it's all based on the data that's feeding it. And so our clients want to do these incredible things and implement these incredible ideas. But I'm like, but what's the data that's feeding this model? And do you have the right data? So those are kind of the things I think about as I'm trying to help our clients put new things out in the market. What are those questions that we need to ask them? Because they're seemingly interesting or seemingly easy questions, like where's your data? But ultimately, they sometimes don't know. And we're working with the marketing team, and the marketing team is like, that's not our thing. We need to talk to the CTO. Anyway, you get the idea.
Yeah, and I think that's great because, and I have a lot of expertise in the area of AI as well, and I think that raises why this type of a degree, the MIPS degree, is so important because you can have, first of all, you're right, there's not enough data in the product world. There are people just generating data so that AI algorithms can learn from them, but when you're creating you mentioned work, interior of airplane, but if you're creating an airplane, there's not that many examples out there to learn from, right? So you still need the designers, the engineers as designers, part of that team to create those new products, even in this world of AI. And you need people that can interpret what you're getting from these machine learning algorithms that you can use within this scope. So you can't just flip the switch and let the Gen AI just go create your solution. And that's where I think you're right. It's a very important area today. And I think, again, the skills you learn in this program help you navigate that.
And I think to build off of that, one of the things my colleagues and I have talked about is we can't have an innovation talk without talking about AI. So of course we're getting into it, but it is, in the last 10 years, there's never been a shortage of ideas at clients. So I felt like I said, I graduated grad school and I was like, clients know what to do next. It didn't mean they had a shortage of ideas. Clients have lots and lots of ideas. It doesn't mean it's a good idea. It doesn't mean it's the right idea. It doesn't mean it's something that they should put out into market. So a lot of what we do is figure out what is the right idea our clients should bring to market. Maybe they don't know what it is, or maybe they have a couple hypotheses and we're kind of helping them figure that out. What AI has done is made it incredibly easy to have even more ideas. They have what used to be maybe dozens is now hundreds. And my coworker always jokes, having hundreds of ideas is as helpful as no ideas. Like, what do you put out? What do you put into the market? And so a lot of what I learned in the program and what I still use today is what makes the right idea, what makes it right for customers and users, what makes it right for the organization that we're developing this on behalf of, and then how do we give our clients the confidence to make the decision that this is what we're moving forward with? Because I think coming up with an idea is not the hardest part, I think, of innovation. The hardest part is making it real. The hardest part is getting everyone to want to say, yep, this is what I'm betting on and what I'm putting out. And I tend to work with large companies where someone's putting their career on the line. Like, they're saying, yep, I'm going to bet my career on this idea. I'm going to move it forward. Innovations, I'm really lucky. Like, I'm on the outside. Innovation's really fun. But I recognize for my clients that they're in it and they're trying to get this through this big organization. But yeah, AI, I think, has it's given you just too many ideas. And a lot of what we're doing now is helping our clients really focus on what's the right idea you should bring to market, why it's the right idea for you and your customers. But right now, everyone's just entering a prompt and getting 100 ideas and be like, let's do all this. And I'm like, you're not going to do all those. Like, getting one idea to market's hard enough, let alone dozens of ideas. So, we're talking about AI ML. What other emerging trends are you thinking about that you want to either that you've thought about over the years to incorporate into the program? I didn't realize you had an AI course. I'm upset that I missed it because again, my tenure was older than that. But how else has the curriculum stayed ahead of the curve? What other trends are you thinking about and wanting to incorporate?
Yeah, and I mean, so one of the other examples was, again, IoT was and is still hot, and we had introduced courses very early in that sort of evolution of that technology. I think a big part of this program still is that capstone project, which is still very unique and exciting, where companies will sponsor a project and they're not interested in you finding a better way to get the door to lock. I mean, these are conceptual product or service or system ideas that could change the entire direction of the company. And we've had students through that project process creating concepts that went to market and won awards or transformed industries. Um, and a good example, we were involved with, you mentioned the truck, but we did work for a while with Navistar Corporation, and they created a paradigm shifting truck that we were instrumental in being engaged with them. And they certainly gave us credit when they introduced it as well, which was wonderful. But they even transformed the whole way they set up the structure of their company based on that experience. So I think it's, again, we talked about accelerating technologies and accelerating capabilities and how that merges together. So it's looking at the specific technologies, but really, or emerging areas, but how do you bring these together in a team to be able to create a product, a service, or a solution that's meaningful and different, and whether it's the product itself that comes to market or how it informs future development, that's still something that really is attractive to industry. But I think it makes this program very different and very real. Um, I guess I think the other thing to mention is that teaming is, you mentioned teaming. Teaming is so important, and I think that's also something that you spend a lot of time with this program on, which isn't trivial, right? I mean, we've all had experiences, or you've probably all, our audience probably, if you're engineering, is you had a capstone course in your undergraduate and you were in a team, and it was maybe a good or maybe a terrible experience, but how you work with others is key to having innovation be successful. And actually, Peter Boatwright, who's the director of the program, and I even wrote a book recently on managing innovation teams, because innovation is so, you need to have not only this three people with these backgrounds, but it's more than that, as you said, 25 people, and how you work together and how you respect each other, but how you leverage that and how you build that team is part of the skill set you'll gain as well in the program.
Yeah, I think a big thing, one, I highly recommend the book. I remember when you came to Boston and were sharing it out, I was like, yeah, that's true. That's true. The other thing I think about that the program really set me up for was comfort with ambiguity. And so I think about with engineering, you're typically given, here's the constraints we're working within, help us solve this problem. And I think what was really exciting about joining the program, what I learned through the program is we don't even know what the problem is. We have a challenge. We have like an area, in the capstone course, I remember for us, it was actually Navistar as well. They wanted to enter the Brazilian market and they're like, that's the prompt. There was nothing out. There was no other context. And our team spent half the course. What is the actual problem we need to solve here? What is the actual problem that if we can solve it would be really meaningful and make a difference in the market? And that comfort with ambiguity that I learned throughout the program is still what I use in every project today. There's a lot of other things I took away, but innovation is inherently, again, really fun, really exciting, but also really scary because it's a lot of unknowns, it's a lot of ambiguity, and it's being able to do that. And also, like you said, these multidisciplinary teams, there's some people really comfortable with that. There's some people who are not comfortable with that. And I can tell you, a lot of my clients are not comfortable with that. And it's how do you make people feel comfortable in the unknown and then bring them along to say, we're going to get to a place where we'll have a problem and we'll have the right solution. So I don't know, you said something that inspired me, so I went on off a
Yeah,
little
thanks.
tangent.
And it's funny, you and I have been talking about trucks for a while. I just want everyone out there to realize this is not about designing trucks, all kinds of projects and products and services. And actually, one of my favorite experiences out of this was I was doing some consulting myself, and I was talking with one of the people who was a relatively new, well, they had a toddler at home, and they were asking me, what I did, and I was telling them about Integrated Innovation Institute and the kind of things we do, and then she was saying, it came up, it was strange, but she started talking about one of her favorite products for her kid, and it was this little device but made by Nook, where you could have like berries and stuff in this cup, and a kid could reach in and grab them and not be messy. And I was like, holy cow, we designed that. Our students designed that. And they brought it to market. And it was like her favorite product. And it was crazy. So I'm only saying that because you will learn how to design solutions, not for a particular industry. And that's why I think you can bring that, Rebecca, that the things you do every day, it's one day one thing and one day totally different, right?
Yeah, it's again, the other thing the degree prepared me for was people are usually surprised that I don't have a specialization. They're like, you're not doing only healthcare, you're not doing life sciences or financial services. I'm like, no, I can do anything. Maybe career-wise, I need to specialize at some point, but the ability to drop into any industry, I get myself smart enough, obviously, if I need to talk to the client about things and we're doing interviews, but really, again, handle any ambiguous challenge that's handed to us and then see it through to what is the vision, what is the strategy that's going to get us there and making it real. We've been talking a lot about physical product, but like I said, the world has gotten more complex, and more complexity means more stakeholders, more skills required. I think about where the world needs the most innovation right now, where the most complex problems are, healthcare, life sciences. I mean, I can go on a whole other thing about life sciences and AI/ML, but totally unrelated topic. Like I said, financial services, I do a lot of work in. I do a lot of work in aerospace, less on the like plane. I can't lead planes, but actually more like operations, like how you make sure planes don't get delayed, because when there's delayed, there's this huge ricochet effect, and the whole complexity of that. It's really, those are the fun problems I like solving. But yeah, it's been really fun seeing how we take, I think 30 years ago, it was very physical product, and how the same approach and methodology can really be applied to these complex problems in incredibly complex and difficult industries.
Yeah, so you've really learned a process, and that's really the skill you learned fundamentally, right? In the program that you've brought with you.
Yeah, I remember the first class I took around research methods, and I was like, we were talking about bird feeder. Our project was bird feeders, and we were designing a bird feeder. And again, the fact that I still remember that project, I think says something, like how I was figuring out, like, oh, squirrels are a big problem. How do we stop squirrels from getting into the bird feed? And then like my current project I'm actually doing around healthcare is, I was to unveil the curtain, we were chatting backstage on there. I'm doing a project right now on high cost care and healthcare. And so I'm doing interviews right now with folks who recently are in remission from cancer, went through very complex surgeries. But it's all the same skills. Obviously I like to think my ethnography skills have been honed over the years. My analysis skills have been honed over the years. I'm, better at facilitation and ideation. But again, those core fundamental skills, I learned all of those in the program. I think about the way I learned analysis, like how do we talk to all these people? How do we make sense of all of this qualitative data? I learned all of that from that course, from the methods class. And I have some tricks of the way that I don't have to do the exact same methodology, but I learned kind of the basics there that help build my skill set today.
Yeah, and you're working for a pretty top-notch design firm, right? How
I
do
like
you
to think.
stay on at the ahead of the curve? What are you doing to maintain that as you move forward? And can you relate that back to, again, what you learn in the program to help you get there?
Yeah. One of the things I think a lot about was we were asked there's a couple of things. So to stay ahead of the curve, one of the benefits of us being acquired, acquisitions, I think are really scary, especially when you're in this like 150 person design firm and you're like brought into this huge company. But one of the biggest benefits we had from getting acquired was I'm now exposed to lots of different types of disciplines. And so my way of staying ahead of the curve is really chatting with my colleagues and understanding, like, what are you seeing? What's going on? The other thing I think about of staying ahead is kind of like I mentioned before, there's no shortage of ideas. It's about making them real. And one of the things we had to do in the program was present all the time. And I never had to present when I was an engineer working. I presented, undergrad, but it was, not often. We had to present all the time. And I remember, again, one of the first semester classes I took, we had a whole lecture on presenting and what a good presentation looks like. And one of the biggest things, again, maybe not answering your question directly, but something prompted it. I'm presenting all the time. I'm constantly having to communicate, not just internally with teams, but externally with our clients, helping my client communicate to their stakeholders. And again, learning that skill early on and saying, okay, we're going to go through this whole process as a class together, and we're going to continually present it out and make sure that we're, sharing, improving. I think it's totally totally underestimated skill, the ability to present. And I don't mean present in a shallow way, but I mean having the confidence in what the work you've done, how to communicate it clearly to people so that they understand that they're as invested as you are. It's hard to not get invested in a project, right? Like you spend months on it, you fall in love with the work and you want it to be real. You want everyone you share that with to feel the same way. And also, I want my clients to bring it to market. I want them to develop it and make it real. So it's one of the things I think a lot about, again, is in terms of my own skill set, how am I making sure, my presenting skills stay up there, but also how do I know the right questions to ask our clients? Like I said before, thinking about data, my data colleague, I'm constantly asking him very likely very naive and silly questions, but he's very patient and he answers them for me. Thinking about what's going on there. And then like I said, one of the big benefits of this skill set that you learn in the program is entering any industry, and you start seeing patterns of how do we take the learnings from one industry and apply it to another? And that's another reason, clients hire innovation firms is if you're an insurance company, all you think about is insurance, maybe it'd be helpful to have someone come in who doesn't always think about insurance. And especially because, fun fact, your clients and your customers don't always think about insurance. So those are the kinds of things I think about in terms of staying ahead of the curve. I wish I read more, but I have a toddler now, so it's really hard to do.
But you mentioned presenting, and I think communication is so important. And again, it is something you really, it seems silly, but you learn a lot about that because you can't get your clients or your customers excited just by showing them something you think is great. You need to get them excited, but especially like in the program, you're presenting to management, sometimes CEOs. And you need to have them understand like that not only do you have this cool solution, but you've done all of the research to show that this is the right solution, or at least a right solution that has a lot of prospects for being successful, and to communicate that and to understand all of the things they're thinking about and being able to address that. And you're right, that's a big part of the program as well. And it's not, you're not just saying, okay, how do you present, but how do you communicate these incredible insights you gain through the research process?
Yeah, I remember actually we were presenting to you and a couple other professors during our capstone project, and we were about mid-analysis, and we had our aha moment. Like, again, what I love about the process we learn and the approach I still use to this day is we do all the deep ethnography. Now obviously we're combining with lots of different data sources. We go into analysis, which is my favorite phase, and you get these aha moments. And we shared our aha moment with you. And I remember you and Peter both started smiling when you kind of heard our aha. And I was like, oh, we're onto something. We didn't have the idea yet. We just had our aha moment, and it was really exciting. And that moment, I still feel that with clients today when we're sharing out our work and we're bringing them along for the process and being able to share with them the aha moment of, you guys have been thinking about the problem this way. We need to reframe it. It's actually like this. And they're like, when you get that nod, it's like the most gratifying thing. I mean, there's lots of gratifying things about my job, but that's to me one of my favorite things about communicating and socializing the work that we do and how we got to those ideas. Is always really exciting.
That's great. I wonder if we should bring Athena back to see if there's some
Yeah.
questions that have been asked that we haven't addressed yet, and then if that's okay, Athena.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you both so much. I feel like I've learned so much just over the last half hour or so. And we do have some questions in the chat already. We'll answer this one. This is from Shannon. What advice would you give to a non-STEM student who's really interested in getting involved in integrated design?
Well, I'm going to start by saying this program isn't, Rebecca has a background in engineering, and I'm certainly an engineering faculty in my background, and we're talking really about that perspective today. But this program isn't about just engineering. The program also brings certainly the business and marketing side, as well as the design, industrial design. So there's like we're all talking about design, but there's also the fields of industrial and communication design and people who have that background who may not actually have any technology background. But part of this program is for people that want to have that understanding and have looked for those experiences. And so, for non-STEM people, this program can be right for them. Now, if your background is in, I don't know, English, then the question is, have you had any experience in designing and creating? That's a discussion to have with the program, whether you have the background to be successful. But certainly it's about bringing these different skills, including non-STEM, but design and as well as marketing and business and together with engineering. Rebecca, you wanted to add anything? I see you sure.
I think what I wanted to add is, and maybe it's more general advice, is one of the most important things when working in multidisciplinary teams is I'll be on Teams meetings and I can just see people talking past each other. I'm like, you're both talking about the same topic, but you're not actually listening and hearing each other. And I think what I learned in the program, what I still use in this today is how to really listen to what people are saying, what the root of what they're getting to, and then being that bridge between the different disciplines in my team. And I think that skill is agnostic of background. I think that's being a good listener, a problem solver, someone who being really collaborative. And I think having that sort of collaborative mentality is really what's most important in innovation. Innovation is not a lone genius in a garage. Innovation requires teams, just point blank. And in order to have those teams be successful, they need to collaborate well. And being able to have the mindset to collaborate is really important.
Absolutely. Okay, the next question I'm seeing here, this person is coming from a strategic brand design background, and they've naturally gravitated towards systems thinking, logic, and business decision making. If they want to pivot into product innovation, what are the key skills or habits that they should start building now to make that transition effective and really be at the center of innovation?
Well, I mean, so what's interesting is, as Rebecca said earlier, her boss, I think it said to you, you're a strategist, right? And so I think that there's a real connection between innovation and strategy. And we've certainly worked with people who are only looking at how to rethink their strategy in their companies. But when you think about, so product is a general concept. So in some ways, a strategy is a product. So you can create lots of different strategies, and that's a product, and you can use these skill sets. But if you really want to ground your focus on products that people use, be they physical or, interestingly, by the way, when we first wrote our book, we first created a version of this program and wrote Creating Breakthrough Products 25 years ago. There was no difference in our view between a physical product and a service. So the skills you learn are the same, absolutely the same. It's only later that people started to differentiate, and certainly how you implement them. That's where you need to bring in different specific discipline skills. But the notion of creating a solution that people use, which is maybe different than the strategy, you're going to need to learn certain where you fit into um, that whole system or process. So you don't need if you're an industrial designer and you come into this program, you're not going to be able to say when you leave, give me a structure and I'll tell you exactly when it's going to break, right? So you need the engineers still for that, but you'll understand what they're thinking about and how it integrates together, how you think. And so you need to learn certain skills, but it's how do you leverage what your background is within this system of innovation. That was probably a pretty murky response, but I hope you understood. And I think Rebecca can probably clarify that maybe.
Yeah, sorry, I'm smiling because I'm thinking about some of my colleagues who I work closely with who have advertising backgrounds, brand backgrounds, who transition more into kind of the work that we now do together. And I think the biggest habit that they needed to break was they were very quick to solution. They sort of were handed a client challenge and very quick to say, like, here's the idea, here's the solution. And the big habit that we were trying to instill in them, and they still do, is one, be comfortable with the process, be comfortable with that we don't have an answer or solution right now. And then the big thing became, we need to spend time figuring out what is the actual problem we are trying to solve. What is the reframe on this challenge? We're given business challenges. What is the reframe on this business challenge into a user-centered or customer-centered problem that we need to solve? I think what's really, when I see that you have a more strategic brand design background, there's a lot of strengths you can pull on from that. Like, even, again, we just talked a lot about communication. That becomes a huge piece in everything that ends up getting done when you're communicating ideas. But I don't know if it's a habit or a habit to break, but that was the big thing I noticed from my colleagues who came from a more traditional industrial design and brand design background, was like, we need to figure out what problem we're trying to solve. And they were always a little bit antsy in that stage. They wanted to kind of, they're creators. They wanted to create. And I'm like, we'll get there. We need to spend some time up front.
Okay, so the next question, I'm going to tweak just a little bit because there's a few questions in this vein, but it's about picking the right graduate program, right? There's a lot of options, not just in the world, but even at CMU. And so what advice do you have in picking the right program? And I guess part B is picking a more specialized program or a more technical program as compared to a more broad and generalist program?
Yeah, I think the answer to that gets to sort of what do you think you want to do and where do you want to get to? Look, I'm the head of mechanical engineering, so we have a lot of master's students in our several programs in mechanical engineering, and they're great programs. Absolutely, they're phenomenal programs. And these are people that are trying to improve their technical skills and trying to advance their abilities to contribute purely on the technology side or primarily. And they can take some design classes and design-oriented engineering classes. But that's sort of different than the MIIPS degree, which is when you're learning about that skill of how do you create solutions through hard problems that can be anywhere, and how do you bring in the different attributes from very, very different disciplines, and how do you think about focusing on understanding what that problem is and doing the research toward what people are particularly focused on, and then generating, those solutions that will succeed in the marketplace. So I think it's a very different kind of degree, a different kind of program, but it really gets down to where do you want your contributions to be and what excites you in terms of what do you want to pursue from a career point of view.
Yeah, and just to echo Jon, I I mean, when I went back to grad school, I'm not going to pretend I had some grand plan of what my career would be. So I understand what it's like to go to grad school a little blind, but I knew I wanted a different direction. So when I was, working as a design engineer, I knew I could either go down the direction of getting more and more technical, which didn't appeal to me, or I could move a little bit more upstream or move a little bit. I'm like physically moving to the side, like kind of shifted to go a different direction in terms of like, I don't want to go deeper, but I might want to go broader. And so that's what got me interested in looking at different programs that weren't about expanding my technical skill set, but instead giving me a different skill set that really appealed to me. In terms of choosing a school, I mean, maybe I'm going to be giving some cliche answers, but reputation's really important. You want to make sure that you have a school with a great reputation that, ultimately you want to be able to find a great job after, or even if you're doing a startup, you're like, you need to get investors, that kind of thing. You want a school with a good reputation. The courses are really important. At the end of the day, when you take a lot of these courses, my biggest advice to students is you're going to need to build a portfolio to showcase your work. And so I looked at the courses and I was able to be like, oh, here's how I can piece together my portfolio to show potential companies I want to work for, like how I think and how I want to work. And so that's really important too. But those are the kinds of things I think about. I mean, there's also other stuff, like I like Pittsburgh. I think it's a great city to be a student in. I still have friends who live there. Yeah.
I think it's a great place to live on long term as well.
Like I said, I have friends that still live there.
I love
Yes.
these answers. Thank you. All right, this next question, I love this one. Okay, so this person, undergrad in electrical engineering. Okay, question. One of my main gripes with school is the restrictiveness or lack of creativity. For someone like myself who enjoys the entrepreneurial side of engineering and wants to use my studies to create a business, what is CMU doing to create programs which foster that kind of environment? My fear is that grad school will try to force me towards a job mindset instead of an innovation mindset.
Well, I think that is really what this program is about, is how do you have an innovation mindset, innovation thinking, and you do learn some of the skills that can help you from an entrepreneurial point of view. I will also say that at Carnegie Mellon that you will have access to, we have, for example, the Schwartz Center for Entrepreneurship, which works with students that have ideas that they want to work toward commercializing. Um, they'll help you think that through and give you some resources and help you find those resources. It doesn't mean that you know, everybody's great idea doesn't necessarily succeed the first time. Some of them do, but you'll learn the skills necessary by becoming involved, and you have the entire university out there that you can leverage. And that's one of the nice things about Carnegie Mellon is why did this program start at Carnegie Mellon? Every school likes to talk about being interdisciplinary and collaborative, but CMU, it's in the core and it always has been. And so there's opportunities to work across disciplines here, which is why MIIPS was able to be created. But also you have access to things like entrepreneurship, um, groups that get together or people that have expertise that can advise you. And so I think those are some of the things you can leverage as well beyond the core program too.
And then to add to that, I think two key points. Grad school is very different than undergrad. And I hope I'm not offending Jon when I say this. Grad school is not about grades. Like it is very much you make of it what you want. And I remember a lot of the kids in my, like, I shouldn't say kids, we were adults. The folks in my program, we didn't finish an assignment to finish an assignment. We finished an assignment because it was due, and we'd work up until the due date, like because we kept wanting to make it better and improve upon it because we were excited about what we were working on. It wasn't about getting an A and it wasn't about finishing it, if I'm making sense. It's very much you make the most of the courses. You decide where you go with those courses. The grades were very secondary. That's just not what it was about in grad school. It was about we're in this class and making the most of that opportunity. And then I wanted to also echo Jon, when I was in the program, there was a business trip or the MBA program, we took a trip to Silicon Valley and I actually joined that trip. So through the program, I got access to Tepper, the business school, and I was able to join in on a Silicon Valley trip they did for a week. And it was basically going to a bunch of startups, interviewing founders. So there's a lot of opportunity to make use of the network that Carnegie Mellon has. And I'm an example of someone who was able to do that. And I think I was the only one in the program at the time who did it, but it seemed interesting. And I said, can I go? And they said, sure. I did.
Yeah, and I can say just within the last couple of weeks, I know of MIIPS students. We have MIIPS students who are Schwartz Fellows, having additional resources through the Schwartz Center. And Hack a Startup is an event that is huge at Carnegie Mellon and huge with the MIIPS students. So there's lots of opportunities to take advantage of those, but just like Rebecca said, it is what you make of it. So find those and take advantage.
And I think there's entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. In other words, you can learn the skills and apply them if you really want to create your own company. But you can also create divisions within a more established company or be part of a team that creates something new. And it's the same, and these are skills that can apply across all of those different instances.
And in fact, one of the types of programs I work on is they're sort of the traditional projects I work on where it's a client comes to us and says, hey, help us enter this market. They also come to us and say, hey, we want to build our innovation capability. Like, help us figure out how we can innovate consistently internally. And again, it's taking everything I learned, applying that, but with more of an organizational corporation bent to it. But that's also really fun too.
Okay, we might have time for one or two more questions. This person is concerned about their quantitative foundation and how that might come across in the application process. Their goal is to develop those skills and use existing skills in learning and talent development to pivot into product roles since their background is HR. Do you have advice for anybody who is concerned about how it might appear or how they could hack it, let's say, without the quantitative components?
Well, I
Well,
still don't have a strong quant background, if that makes anyone feel better.
you say you do or don't?
Do not.
You don't.
I work with colleagues who have much stronger quant backgrounds than I do. I learned all the qualitative methodology in the program. I have been projects I've used quant. I'm not by any means an expert. I like to think I'm T-shaped. So I have some quant, but sorry, John, I'll let you answer. I was just quickly laughing at that question because I was like, I don't have that.
No, you feel no, that's great. And I mean, I will say you do have more quantitative than maybe you're admitting, given your degree in mechanical engineering, but maybe in terms of what you're focused on, I think, and I think that's, if your background is in, for again, industrial design, you probably don't have a heavy quant background. You might, but most don't. If you're in the business sense, you may have more of a finance background, which would be more quant, but you may be more marketing. That might not be very quant oriented. So I think again, the program is a mix. And you're going to, if you don't have a background in technical background, you're still going to take courses to talk about technology and engineering, but they're taught in a way that they don't expect you to have the mathematical background that an engineer would have to be able to solve those technical problems, but rather to think strategically about technology and how it integrates. And there's enough people with different skill sets in the program that a team is well balanced.
When we said quant, I thought we meant like quantitative research. Sorry, I'm so in my world sometimes.
No, it may be. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, but being a good mechanical engineer from Carnegie Mellon, I know you can solve stress analysis quite. No, that's great. But yeah, so quant research, right? I think this program really focuses more on qualitative research than quantitative research. And maybe that's your point, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Because quantitative research is great if you want to look at the statistics of how a marketplace responds to a certain question, but that happens after you've already created your concept. We're talking about how do you create the concept to begin with so that the quant people can dig in and say, well, should it be blue or should it be aqua? I think that's what you're saying, right, Rebecca?
Yes,
I
thank you.
absolutely agree. Yeah, no, that's good.
Perfect. And in the last 2 minutes, I'm going to throw a zinger, perhaps. But what is the biggest disruption to the innovation landscape that you anticipate in the next 5 years?
Well, I think I'll answer this in a good professorial way, which is going to be throw it back to all the people who asked that question. But I think one of the big questions out there right now is what is the role of machine learning and AI as we move forward? And I personally think AI and ML is real and here to stay, but it's not going to remove the need for thinking and understanding what the implications are and the human research. And it's not going to replace the creative attributes that people have when they're looking at solving these really exciting problems. And so I think there's going to be disruption in terms of some of the mechanics of how things are done and implemented, and it's happening now. but it's going to, in many ways, make the MIPS degree even that much more valuable for people to advance in their career and for industry.
This question's so hard. I'm a really bad futurist. I'm like I'm like good at incorporating trends. I'm so bad at predicting them. Agree with everything Jon said. I think the thing I think a lot about, and it's kind of echoing what I said before, is there's just so many things clients can, and I'm saying client just from my perspective, can do. And I just see this paralyzation. And again, as they're going to get more and more ideas, more and more technology they need to incorporate, companies are getting bigger and bigger. I just see this need of like a better breakthrough in like, how do we get things out that are actually good? I think people are putting things out. I question whether or not it's always executed the way it needs to be. I think also one of the things I've been thinking a lot about with AI is like what we call like AI slop and work slop and things like that. And I'm really curious how that's going to impact productivity, because there's a great HBR article on work slop. I recommend people read it. But just what is it going to mean to like having to correct people's work? Like, did you read it? Did you actually look at like what you just sent me and wrote? Sorry, I went off a little tangent, but that's not even 5 years I'm dealing with it right now. So
I get it. It's definitely at the forefront for all of us. But I know we're at time, so I want to just say a huge thank you to everybody who joined here today for the fireside chat. And again, a big thank you to Jon and Rebecca for sharing their expertise. So thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.